Home Improvement was gearing up for production. It had its 2 leads in place.
I like taking things apart and fixing you.
There was only one problem. The star had never acted before.
It's apart, you know, and I can't do that with you and fix you and...
All I want is for you to be attentive and comfort me. Why is that?
Being a stand-up comedian doesn't mean that you're going to be a great actor. So yeah, anytime you go into a job and you've got a stand-up, you're thinking, well, this is hit or miss.
Disney sent me to acting school. They had an acting coach. But I think the only reason they did that was they want to make sure, can he memorize lines? I know that's what it was. I mean, they sent me these real serious acting coaches. I was doing really weird plays, real serious stuff. I had to cry and emote, and it was ridiculous for me. The guy says, beg for your life. And I'm going, I'm going to kick this guy right in the nuts if he says that one more time to me.
What we did was try to find good actors who could go to Tim, meaning Tim would always be in the center of a scene. He would never have to do exposition. The other actors always do the exposition. Tim just had to react. And that, we discovered, Tim could do great.
Certainly in the comedy profession, you're doing acting the entire time in very intense bursts. My comedy, anyway, I had to become that guy, and I had to sell it in 7 seconds. So I know how to get into character. What I was a little worried about was sustaining any kind of emotion.
Initially, when we would do emotional scenes together, he would call for a cut because he would start to cry. And it would so disturb him that I was crying, that he'd be like, wait, stop, she's upset.
She scared Tim so badly a couple times in rehearsal that he kind of went, I think she's really mad. I mean, I think she's really, well, Pat's a good actress. I mean, but she would not back down, and she went face to face with him.
The one thing Tim couldn't fake was the kissing.
The original wife, Mrs. Taylor, was another woman. And she was a fantastic kisser. Not that Pat wasn't, but this first girl they hired, she went after it, and I said, this is gonna be a lot of fun. I'm gonna like Hollywood a lot.
And then poor Tim, you know, he's had this really attractive woman that he's gotten to kiss all week, and he's having a lot of fun, and all of a sudden, you know, she's out of there, and in comes big lactating mother.
All the kissing with Pat was like, it was like kissing your aunt. It was like this. She goes, Tim, you can't. Number one, it looks horrible. Number two, it's repulsive to feel somebody's lips that tight.
To round out the family, Tim and the producers wanted 3 sons to create the ultimate masculine environment. But ABC had a different idea.
The network kept saying, oh, you have to have a daughter. And we said no, because we wanted Jill surrounded by this sea of testosterone. It's all boys. She's outnumbered, she's outgunned, she's gonna have to fight twice as hard.
So Tim Taylor would get 3 sons to teach the facts of life, how to grunt and flex and fix things around the house. A casting call went out to find the right boys.
Casting children, it's always tough. You see hundreds, even thousands of kids to find a handful of them.
We wanted Midwestern faces, you know, sort of open faces.
The very first person we cast was Jonathan Taylor Thomas. That was a no-brainer. He walked in and just bowled us over. And then we took him to the network, and he sat in the room with 18 adults and wowed them, and so he was in.
We said, hire him. Just hire him. You know, it was like, there was no question.
Even at the age of 10, Jonathan Taylor Thomas already had 5 years of acting experience. He was an old pro.
You realize that this was a young man who could make a line real and funny, and that's very difficult.
Are you saying this thing needs more power? Let me open it up. I can make this thing go faster.
Well, why don't we just save you the trouble and throw it up against the wall?
JT could see through Tim the way a smart little boy can see through his father.
So immediately, a lot of making fun of Dad was shifted towards Jonathan because he could, you know, he scored.
The character of Randy was a chip off the old block, only smarter. Another young actor who had read for the same part was Zachary Ty Bryan.
I remember I originally went in for the role of Randy, and my first meeting was with Debbie Barilski, who was the casting director. And as soon as I walked in, I didn't even start the audition, and she said, "You need to read for Brad. You're more of a Brad."
He was just like the all-American kid. You just thought that this kid is right out of a 1950s sitcom. He just looked wholesome and healthy, and he was as outgoing as can be. And when he walked in the room, I remember Matt just tapped me and he said, "This kid should be in the show just because of the look."
The sweet, innocent youngest brother would be Mark Taylor, the one who idolized his father and, of course, got picked on by his older brothers. 7-year-old Taron Noah Smith tried out for the role.
He walked into the audition, big grin, beautiful blonde hair, innocent eyes, about 2 feet tall, and we said, "This is the kid."
You know what all those sparrows do?
Yeah, of course.
When we did the pilot, and we did the scene where Tim and he are gonna fix the dishwasher, and Tim sparks and burns himself and starts hopping around, and Taron just jumps in there and hops around with him, and you got these 2 half-naked men dancing in the kitchen. It was hysterical.
It always haunts me because they had me take my shirt off, and I'm this little 7-year-old boy with no shirt. It was very funny, but I don't think I'll ever live that one down.
The sons were cast. Now it was time to add in more men to the masculine mix, like Wilson, the barely seen next-door neighbor, the Socrates of the suburbs.
Tim pitched this notion. He said, my neighbor in Michigan, he said, every time I talk to him, all I see is this much of him. He says, he's on the other side of the fence. We go, "Hey, how you doing?" We talk.
I wanted a neighbor who we never saw, who was all about a voice and a personality. And really, it was this consciousness of man. That's the, the metaphor I wanted. You never see him. He really was supposed to be just a hat.
And we said, okay, let's make him the ultimate mentor, the mentor that the lost child can turn to.
Jill doesn't get the job she wants. I tell her not to feel bad. She gets angry.
Wilson was all the grandpas and all the great uncles and all the great men in your life rolled into one guy with a master's in psychology and behavioral psych.
You see, Tim, by nature, men are problem solvers, but Jill didn't want you to solve her problem.
She didn't?
No. She just wanted you to listen while she shared her feelings.
We had offered this role to somebody else. We had met somebody in casting who was younger than Earl, sort of a wilder-looking guy, more of the wild man. And then a week before the pilot, we got a call from his agent who said, "What do you mean he's behind a fence?" Well, I thought we explained that. No, we don't want to do it.
So we're scrambling, and we went through all the lists of actors. We started re-watching casting tapes, and finally somebody said, well, here's this guy in New York, and we popped him in, and we heard his voice. We said, okay, just fly him out. And of course, it was Earl, and he was perfect.
Earl Hindman would be the man behind the fence for almost a decade.
You really need a great actor to go, I'll stay behind a fence for 8 years. I don't have to be seen. That's very rare for an actor to feel that way.
Tim Taylor had a feisty wife, 3 rambunctious sons, and an all-knowing next-door neighbor. All the producers needed was a straight man, a tool-time co-host who could handle Tim's constant jabs.
It was modeled on the relationship between Bob Vila and Norm. The whole notion of it was, here is a guy who should have been next in line to run the show, who was co-opted by someone who was more entertaining and more flamboyant. But Al was the expert.
Rick Karn had worked in regional theater for years. He came to Los Angeles looking for work, but it was bad driving that got him his big break.
I first heard about a show called Home Improvement at traffic school. I was doing a Shakespeare play, and I came home and kind of like rolled through a stop sign and went to traffic school. This is so I wouldn't have to pay that ticket. And I sat next to this woman who was an agent, and over 8 hours you get to know somebody. And she mentioned these guys that I had said that I had met a couple of years ago. She goes, well, they're doing a new play. So I called David McFadden, and he goes, yeah. And, you know, we would have called you, but you're not really right for anything. There's really nothing for you. But you know what? Come on in.
When the producer's initial choice, Stephen Tobolowsky, couldn't make the pilot, they offered Rick a temporary position.
And at that point, you know, I was going, well, sure, you know, any work, great, I'd love to. Do the pilot, fine.
Like any good craftsman, Rick would make the most of Al's small part.
I think he had one line in the pilot. I don't think so, Tim, which wasn't a laugh line. And when Rick Karn took the line, he looked at Tim for about 3 beats.
And there's like this huge pause of me looking at him. The audience laughs at that. And then I said, I don't think so, Tim. And the audience laughs at that. And I'm thinking, okay, yeah, I did that. I got my little laugh.
Luck would turn Rick's way when the original actor dropped out for good. Al's flannel shirt was his for keeps. With a family and a straight man, all the series lacked now was one more thing: a sexy assistant who knew how to handle a tool.
We had good sessions casting the Tool Time Girl. I don't want my wife to know this.
I mean, we had everything happening in the room. I mean, it was Hollywood.
We actually saw Ashley Judd for the role, and we wanted to cast Ashley Judd in the role. You know, she was great, but her agent said, we think she has a movie career. We don't want to do this. So, well, so they were right.
And Pamela Anderson came in, and she was elusive and sort of playful. And when we put her into the overalls, you had sort of a, you know, a Wisconsin farm girl look. I had no idea who Pamela Anderson was.
It turned out that Pamela, the new tool girl, had been a Playboy model.
So we started getting letters from people all over the country, especially the Midwest, saying, this is a family show. How could you cast a Playboy centerfold? And we truly didn't know at the time. There were a number of surprises in putting this show together.
The producers were about to face the biggest surprise of all. Casting was complete, the show had been built, but Tim had a secret that Disney and ABC didn't know. Home Improvement was in danger, and it hadn't even premiered yet.